This is Stronger Than My Father with Marcus Minis.
Welcome to another episode of Stronger Than My Father podcast. I am your host, Marcus Minis. This podcast today, I am blessed to be in the luxury studio of my podcast producer, Mr. Jim McCarthy, at Jim McCarthy Voiceover, his studio in Thompson Station. So we're recording today here, and I'm really excited to dive in another episode of fatherhood, but just dive in another episode of just doing podcasting. So I have a special guest as we are launching our Mother's Day series, where we want to talk to moms and get their opinion on motherhood. But today's guest is a fiery real estate agent who I've been knowing for about 2 years, and her story is amazing. And I just like her energy when she talks. So I wanted to bring her in to kick off our Mother's Day series. And I would like to introduce to my guest, Miss Jennifer Weithman. Got it right?
You did, yes.
All right, welcome to my podcast. So let's relax. Let's dive into fatherhood. So for my guests who do not know who you are, tell them a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and then we're going to dive into fatherhood and a little motherhood.
Okay. So Jennifer Weithman, I've moved to Tennessee back in 2000 from Columbus, Ohio. So yes, go Buckeyes. Sorry.
Oh.
Just get that out
I got
of the
a Florida
way,
State
right away.
Seminole fan coming in later on today. So we're going to be rooting for Florida State.
What did they say in the South? Bless your heart.
Bless my heart. You got it.
All right. So we moved here, and when you talk about motherhood, I actually went through infertility. So I have 2 sets of twins.
Okay.
My girl twins are 25, my boy twins are 20, and my house is known as the Tennessee boarding house. I probably have about 30 other children who call me mom.
Okay.
And when I was going through the infertility, the reason I mentioned the boarding house bit is that my mother is just a prayer warrior. And she called me one day and she's like, hey, I have a Bible verse and it's really for you. And it was in Psalms, and it was the barren woman's house is overrun with children. And that is true. Like, there are so many kids at my house. And none of us get married thinking that we're going to be a single parent ever, either through widowing or through divorce or anything else. Yet that's where I ended up. So, my boys were, 10 when I got divorced.
Okay.
And my girls were 15. So, all parts of childhood are really critical.
Yeah.
But that's a really challenging part, especially for parents, because there's so much going on. And so, we just started off on our journey, and their dad lives local. He was involved a lot with their sports, but most of the other things fell to me.
Did you see, like, raising children as a single mom? I don't know personally how hard it is. My wife went out of town a couple of weeks ago, and I had to do everything for the boys, from ironing the clothes, washing clothes, making sure they have everything taken them to school. What are some of the struggles that you've seen, and maybe what you experienced trying to do a lot of the things on your own, of raising 2 girls and 2 boys? What are some of the struggles that you had to endure?
Well, and let me say too that when we were married, the way our marriage was set up was he was the breadwinner.
Yes.
And he dealt with the kids with sports things, and everything else was on me.
Okay.
Anyway, so when we got divorced, I asked my kids, how are you feeling? How are you processing? And all of them independently, I asked them, not all in a room together. They said it's not a lot of change. And that was the same for me, except now I have to financially support
exactly
all of them, because that part really was on me. I mean, I had some child support, but it was very minimal. And the first few years, it wasn't coming. So that is the hardest thing, I think, for most single moms, is that we're not being the mom that we might have been able to be if we were with the dad, but we are still being a very good parent. So yes, getting the kids ready, being there for them with their emotions and good, bad, ugly, all of that, taking care of that part of it that a lot of times the mom does, but then going out and trying to make a living to be able to support your kids. And I've always said, we're not going to try and keep up with whoever's doing what around us.
Yeah.
That's just not me. And there are so many fun things that you can do wherever you live without any money. But then I'm an outdoor girl, and the outdoor is usually free. So my kids grew up hiking, camping, kayaking, doing lots of fun things. But that was the stress of me. And I mean, my lack of sleep, because somebody's like, well, why don't you sleep? And I'm like, I'm a really light sleeper. Because if something's happening in that house, is this okay? Is the kid going sneaking out? They didn't, thank God my kids didn't do that stuff. Nobody's sneaking out. I don't care if you go get some potato chips, but is somebody sneaking in? You're kind of always on.
Yes.
If you're a single parent, you are always on.
One thing I asked, I guess, when I did a Mother's Day series last year is, what gives you the strength to move forward when you get tired? When a single mom gets tired and you're raising your kids and you are the only one, what gives you the strength? And we're all going to say God. Yeah. Which we know that's number one. Yeah. But outside of God, and I hope I ain't making God mad, is that what gives you the strength? Because people ask me all the time of what I do, but what gives you the strength to keep moving forward when you're dealing with these obstacles?
Well, I'm going to say something, a funny story. Okay. When I was pregnant with my second set of twins, we didn't know how many I was having. It was a chance it could have been triplets. I mean, it could have been more than that. But I live in the South, and I'm like, y'all pray for me. Yeah. That it's twins. And everybody's like, oh, we'll pray that God, God won't give you more than you can handle. I'm like, y'all are idiots, because the rest of that verse is he's not going to give you more than you can handle with him. And it ain't what he can't handle. It's my ability to rely on him, which still stinks a lot of the time. So I'll say that, because I always tell people it's not about what God won't give you more than you can handle. As far as what keeps you going, you look at the kids, just as you would as a father, I imagine. You look at your kids and you're like, failure is not an option. That is not a road we're going to be able to go down. Yes. Because if I go down, they're going down, and I can't allow that to happen.
Exactly. And I'm the same way. When I look at my two boys, I have a wife that helps, and everybody say, hey, you're lucky. You got two people in the house. And I know that's what God designed was, but you know how life changes things. Yeah. But I feel like as a dad, it's my responsibility to be sure I put my kids in the best position, but also be a helpmate to my wife. We both help each other and we make things work. So as you know, you told at the beginning that, hey, marriage didn't work. It didn't work out. Now you're a single mom raising boys. How was it raising two boys and two girls? How was it raising the boys? Did they ever ask, where's my dad? I need my dad more. I want to be at my dad's house. Because in mentoring, I hear that a lot. It's like, I need my dad, I need my dad. And was that a big struggle for you?
So the boys, one is his dad's mini-me.
Okay.
The other is very much a lot like me. And my ex and I are not a lot alike. So the one who's a lot like his dad had a very tight relationship with his dad because they did sports stuff together.
Got it.
Until he quit doing sports. And then he wasn't around as much. The one who's more like me, I was a gymnast. I was a swimmer. I did, skiing. And that wasn't considered a sport to my ex. Gymnastics wasn't.
Wow. It's a sport. Yeah.
I know. And I don't want to dog him down, but that's just the way it is. So I see it impacting the one who was not the ball player more, but the one who's very much like him. One of the things when you say you have your spouse to support is that you're there for them. And that's one of the hardest things of being a single parent is you don't have someone to decompress and talk to. Because not that I didn't fail, but you try not to let your kids know the stresses you're under.
Yes.
Or that you're really angry or frustrated with their other parent or whoever it is that you're angry or frustrated with, because kids are your biggest cheerleaders and they're going to be mad then at that person too, right? So my son, who's the most like his dad, he came to me once and he's like, I'm not saying I don't want to be like my dad, because I am. And I looked at him and I said, listen, your dad has some fantastic qualities.
Yes.
It's how you choose to use what you have been given. So you have the ability, if you don't want to follow in every single one of his footsteps just because you're like him, you don't have to. Take all the good you can.
Okay.
And then make it yourself better. So I think that the stupid things like, how do you tie a tie? I don't know how to tie a tie.
Yes.
I thank God for some of the YouTube channels that show people how to tie ties.
They will tell you.
Now, I have shown my kids how to change electrical outlets and switch out lights and change toilets and things like that because I'm very handy. One of the girls was dating a guy who was pretty good with mechanics, and I said he was going to do an oil change on his car. So I said, I have extra kids at my house. So I have 4 that are like my sons. And I said, get all of them and take them out there and show them how to do an oil change and change the tires while you're at it. Now, I will tell you, I probably know how to change a tire. I could do it.
But you taught your son?
No,
okay.
I had one of the girls' boyfriends. But I will princess before I change a tire. I'll be like acting helpless out there. and you know when I told my daughters about that, then the man who helps you that changes the tire, he feels good because he helped somebody change a tire or the light bulb in their car, even though you could do it. And you feel good because you didn't get your hands dirty.
Wow.
That's princessing.
Wow. Well, let me ask for girls now. I understand boys, and great analogy. How hard was it for raising girls? Because girls got to deal. Okay, explain it to me. How is that harder?
So, and this is where it'll be more emotional.
Okay.
And I mentioned this to you the other day. If a boy doesn't have a father figure around, a lot of times they will grow up to get involved in anger issues. They'll do drugs, they'll fight a lot, they'll whatever. And so if a girl doesn't, a lot of times she's looking for that masculine influence. And so they will sometimes grow up to misuse their body in looking for that. And so that was really hard. And one of the reasons I finally did finalize my divorce, because I went through 4 years, is I said, I am not going to allow my children to grow up to think this is what a marriage is.
Okay.
I'm not going to let my girls think that this is how a man should treat them in a marriage. And I said, I'd probably take my sons out if I saw them treating a wife like this. And like I said, it was he and I, because he since went on and he was involved with someone else and treated her very well. And I was glad that they got to see some of that. Unfortunately, she passed away, which is it makes me sad for him. But like I said, I don't want to dog him down, but it's very hard. And we were designed, when at all possible, to have 2. The other thing too, so I've been divorced since 2012 and I've dated, I think that 6 people probably have met my kids. And know where I live. So
you protected them.
I did, because I don't want to kill somebody, and I would.
I know.
I would. So, and I think, like, my daughter is a single mom. My granddaughter is going to be 5 in just a few days. And she's getting ready to get stationed out at Langley. And her good friend is going with her to help her because it is hard alone. And I told him, I said, don't be bringing guys that you're dating around your kids. That was one thing I saw as a Girl Scout leader when I was married and had no clue that I was ever going to get divorced. Is I saw some of the single moms bringing guys in and out of their, especially daughters' lives. But these kids will get attached because we are meant to be attached to an adult of both. And so if you're bringing someone in that kind of a role, your kids are going to be attached to them. And you have to be very careful about that, because then if you don't work out, that child is not going to continue that relationship either. And maybe the boyfriend-girlfriend relationship with that child is still good, but they can't be around that parent, still. It's too hard for those who have broken up to be around. Yeah,
because you deal with those attachments. And it's kind of like even with me doing mentoring. It's an attachment because you want. I want to help that kid so much, but when I first started mentoring my cousin, it was an attachment. And when his grandmother died, I was hoping we would still call each other on Sundays. And the older he got, the less he would call. And my father told me, you just got to move on. And I think a lot of times what kids do get attached. We have a kid in our mentoring program who lost his stepfather. He was attached, and he was actually killed in a car accident, but the attachment was there. And I think now more than ever, kids are looking for someone to look up to. And that's why you see the gangs, stuff like that, are out here, because kids that father figure not in the home has a huge effect that I don't think a lot of people really know. And so let me ask you this controversial question that I get fussed at a lot. 2 questions. First is, can a woman raise a young man without a father? That's my first question.
They can. Are they going to do it to highest level as if they were still involved with the parent? I don't know, because I don't know what that other parent was.
Yeah, because I've had a lot of slack about
forever.
that. Yeah.
And so, you talk about like back in Bible times, whatever, right? It's take care of the widow and the orphan.
Exactly.
But yes, they can. And women and men alone have both been raising children forever, because there's always the possibility of death or different things that happen that take somebody. Yes, they can.
But to be a man,
you have to be more cognizant. And it is very hard, because I don't know the male experience.
Yeah.
To know how to educate them. Now, I will say this on dating.
Yeah.
My boys learned a lot from the guys that my daughters dated, even if they didn't meet them.
Okay.
And so for the younger guys, if you're listening, don't leave them on open. Okay. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But like the girls would be in the kitchen. I can't believe it. And then the boys would walk through and they're like, what was that about? I'm like, well, here's what it is.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing that they would have been learning if their dad and I were still together, they would see when I made him mad what I did that was not correct. Or when he disappointed me or made me sad, they would see that. You learn from being in that environment and seeing it. So could I raise a man to that level? No, I probably couldn't, because I am not a man and I don't know that experience. But there are things that I can give to my sons that their dad can't. Just like there are things that the girl's dad can give to them that I can't. And, and that's how to be a strong, respectful man, what that looks like,
So we're saying that, in your opinion, a woman can raise a young man to be a good man, a good father, in your honest opinion?
I think that a woman can raise a man to be a good man and a good father. But it is never going to be as full as if a man stepped in and did it too. 100%.
Okay.
And I'll probably get flack for this when I was saying the hardest thing is to do it all.
Yeah.
That, in my opinion, is one of the problems with the women's liberation movement, is that it was like, you've got to work to highest level. You've got to keep this to highest level. You've got to keep fit to highest level. You've got to do your kids to highest level. Well, great. We all should.
Okay.
But is it really, it's like being drawn and quartered. You can only be pulled so many ways. You only have so much energy to do a certain amount every day.
I got it. And there's another question I used to get fussed about when I used to do radio was, should a mother get a card on Father's Day?
I don't want one. But you know what?
I want to be sure, because I used to get fussed about that.
No, I don't want one. But I didn't get Mother's Day presents when I was married either. So,
well, I remember we talked about that. You gave me some of the best advice, and I know my wife listens to this podcast, so I'm not going to tell her advice. I'm going to just surprise her what you told me about what to do on my kid's birthday, which I'm going to do.
Yeah, that was stellar.
That I've never heard that before till you told me that.
Yeah, well, that was my friend Chris and Joe Meckler. So if y'all are listening, you can know that came from him.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So I when you did your presentation at our bar networking group, you talked about going into real estate and how, you didn't have a lot of funding, but you did it. I want you to tell that story of how you got started in real estate, because people who may be listening may want to get into real estate, but what are some of the good and the bad? But your story, how you become the fiery.
Yeah.
And I ever since I've met you, you've had this fiery in you about real estate, and you ain't playing.
No.
You're not playing with nobody, and I think that's why you're at the top of your game in real estate, is because you took no for an answer. So tell my audience a little bit about that story.
So I said I moved to Tennessee in 2000. My girls were 2, and I'd been having people ask me to be in real estate since. And to do the level that I wanted, I couldn't do with that many kids that young. So then I get divorced, and I'm looking for something that will make me head of household income. And I was hired as an admin for a land sales company. They paid for me to get my license, and then almost immediately they shut doors. So if you ask most people, what do you need to have in reserve to go into real estate? They're going to say 6 months. The average realtor is 45, I think, to 55 years old, married, because it's not often a single income thing. And a lot of people watch HGTV and think they swan around. We don't do anything. We pull in these big checks, and it's not that. So when I started in real estate, I had between $800 and $1,000 in the bank. I had a $5,000 credit card, and I had about $1,200 coming in on some contract to close work I was doing for the company that had the land sale company. And at that time, It was in 2014. Spring Hill still had a number of rentals. I placed probably 25 families in rentals because my first day on desk duty, I got called to list a rental. Mm-hmm. And it was an okay rental, but he was very particular about the people he wanted in. And the people who were his caliber they wanted a little more in a house. Mm-hmm. So I placed probably 25 families in rentals at $100 to $300 a pop. And then I asked everybody at about the second or third home I showed them to rent, is there a reason you're not buying? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I heard, well, I don't think I can have the money. And at that time, Spring Hill was USDA eligible, which is a zero down program for if you're buying in a rural area. So Spring Hill was considered rural until like June of 16. So I said, you have first and last month's rent. You've got this. Let's just see if you're credit worthy and your income works. And so I placed 4 people into home sales, and I haven't looked back. So I just found out last week that I'm in the top 2,000 for Middle Tennessee realtors. Again, it's the third year, not just at Benchmark, but in Middle Tennessee.
That's why I call you fiery.
Yeah.
I call you fiery for that.
Right.
But when you talked, you talked about you took no for an answer.
Yes.
And also you said failure was not an option in real estate because two questions. What is the average real estate person stay in the business? How often do they quit? And what made you what would you determine not to quit? How would you determine not to quit in real estate? Because from my opinion, from real estate, don't you have to wait till you get your money and stuff like that in real estate?
Oh yeah,
I want to be sure.
We do lots of work and never get paid on it because if it doesn't get to close, you're not doing it. Now it's rarer not to get paid on a listing, but sometimes people decide they don't want to sell their house after all.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that first year when I said I placed 25 people in rentals, I don't know how many people I worked with who then squirreled off and rented from an apartment or something else, and you get no pay.
Yeah.
So I think the failure rate, I know the majority go out after a year, and if you can make it to 5 years, you're usually going to stay put.
Yeah.
And then, failure was not an option because I've got these kids that are looking at me to do this, but I was really fortunate too with that. The skill set needed for real estate was skills and traits that I possessed. So you have to be somewhat outgoing. There are some introverted realtors, but they're really rare. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been told no enough times in my life from my parents through my friends to everything else that if you tell me no, okay, I was no worse off than before I asked. So, and if I figured, and then being good with language to know how to write a phrase. Yeah. If I wasn't a realtor, I'd probably be a lawyer.
Okay.
And I'd probably be a lawyer for whatever side was getting shafted because someone always is. And then, what was that thing I was going to say?
Well, the thing you was talking about was that most real estate agents stop within a year.
Yes.
And you make it to 5, you're good.
Usually you're good. And most realtors do 2 to 4 transactions a year also.
That's all?
That's it. There's a lot of part-time and hobbyists out there.
How can you make a good income doing that?
Well, it depends on if you're only like saying, I'm not going to go X far from some of the higher income houses.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing that I decided early on. My family, I mentioned my daughter's in the Air Force. She's the 9th generation to serve.
Okay.
And a lot of times our veterans have more modest means or they're in the country and so I became kind of a rural agent. Yes, I live and work in Spring Hill, but I'll work Dixon to Tullahoma. And a lot of agents won't drive out there. They won't deal with something, even back then, that was less than $150,000. And I'm like, if it gives my family a little bit of money to make that next little bit, and if it puts a roof over your family's head, then God put me here to do that. And I'm going to do it.
Let me ask you this then, as we're getting close to the end, and I don't want to brag on you, but what makes you feel like you're the best realtor out here?
I hope I'm the best realtor that you've ever worked with. That was one of the things I said the other day. There's a lot of great realtors, and I hope that there are more because then when I have to do a transaction, I've got one I'm working with.
Yes.
But what my clients have said that they like about me is that I educate them, and which I come from a long line of teachers. So, and I try and communicate very well and keep myself up on knowledge of what's going on in the industry, in the areas I work. We're not supposed to work in areas that we can't efficiently represent. So most agents are not going to feel comfortable going out to Dixon, down to Lawrenceburg, down to Lewisburg, out to Tullahoma, but those are areas that I work and play in on my own. So I feel okay doing it.
Okay.
So, and educate yourself. I mean, it's okay. It's something else I tell my kids a lot. There's a difference between ignorance and stupidity.
Okay.
And I'm okay with being ignorant because that just means I have something left to learn. And I hope I'm always ignorant on something, because the day I think I know it all is probably the day I'm the stupidest.
Yeah.
Stupid, and we're not allowed to say that, but I think we have to be able to describe when people do dumb things. Stupid means you cannot learn something because you just have some kind of a mental processing situation, or you refuse to.
Okay.
So if, like I have people, I have a stupid question. I'm like, you don't have a stupid question. And if you don't understand it when I'm done explaining whatever your answer was, then I need to try better. And the other thing is too, my answer is not the only, like if I'm telling my client, hey, this is what I do, and they're like, okay, well, tell me what you don't like about it. Let's see if we can work around it. So one of my other tags is educate, adapt, and overcome. And that comes from the long line of military and teachers that I have.
Wow.
Let's figure out how to get to your objective. And if it's not right now, how soon can we get there?
And that's true. I think, I don't know that world of real estate, but I know a lot of people that's in it, a lot of people who has failed, a lot of people who is very successful now. As we wrap it up, two questions, not questions, but two advice I want you to give to people that's listening is, number one, if a person was looking for a house that's looking right now, what do you give like a young couple that's looking for a home? What would be advice you would give them to, what's the first thing they need to do to prepare to buy a home? Well,
first you got to talk with a lender, because I want you to know where you are and what your budget is. And just like if I was going to do a podcast, I wouldn't know where to start, what to do. I'd be like, I need to get a mic. I could buy the wrong thing. People go closing credit cards, paying off debts that may or may not impact their credit score and their ability to buy. So get with a lender, get with a professional, and follow what they say. Don't hire a lawyer and not listen to them.
Okay.
Don't hire a lender and not listen to them. Don't hire a realtor and don't listen to them. And then speaking to Nashville, especially in Middle Tennessee, our market is so hard. It is so expensive. Get in any house you can and let the equity of it rise you to your next. We had a 25% rise in income of equity last year. That is astronomical. Usually it's 3 to 5 nationally, but Williamson County is usually running at 10 to 15 the years I've been in, and Middle Tennessee has been running at 7 to 10. So what are most people doing to increase their income by 7 to 10 or 15% a year? Nothing. So don't tell me I need to live in XYZ school zone. And I'll look at you and say, well, how old are your kids? Well, we're just getting married. We don't have kids, or we just had the baby. That means you got 5 years to get into a house, improve it, have the equity rise. That's why I had my son, who's 20, buy a house in Lewisburg. It's a good area. It's an ugly grandma house. He can fix it up and get moving forward.
Well, you gave some great tips on buying a house. And then the last question I have to ask you is, we started with single moms. If you have any advice for a single mom that may be struggling raising kids, what would be your advice to them?
It's okay if you mess up.
Okay.
It's not going to be the end of the world. Acknowledge when you mess up, and do apologies even to kids goes a long way. Don't let failure be an option. But don't let little fails completely stop you and decimate you. Don't look for the easy way out, because the easy way out will often have impacts that are not necessarily good for y'all in the long run.
Man, you couldn't say it no better than that.
So
you teaching me something. That failure is not an option. So, and I have 2 boys and a wife, but I tell myself in the business that I'm in, sometimes I feel like it's a real estate because you got to network, you got to get people to donate. And it's a challenge at times. It's a challenge at times, and I have to find a way to keep my head together to keep doing it. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for blessing the mic and coming to do a podcast. We definitely got to do a part 2 with just talking about real estate.
Sure.
Because you have so much knowledge. So let's look to do something in the fall.
Sounds good.
And we talk about more about real estate.
Sounds good.
You fiery. Hey, thank you so much for watching and listening to another episode of Strong in My Father podcast. You can listen to this episode and additional episodes by visiting our website at strongerthanmyfather.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening. God bless you, and see you in another episode of Stronger Than My Father podcast.